to share a really fun little video with you today. This is called Quilt Stories, and it is talking about all the quilts that I currently have in my home. And so you are going to see the quilts, and I'm going to tell you the stories behind them. I'm going to tell you who made them. Some of them I've made, some of them were made by family members, and just share a little fun video today for you with some stories and visuals to go together. So the first quilt that I'm showing you was made around 1979 or 1980 by my mother. And she is not, I would say, an avid quilter. She's made a few quilts in her life. This is one of them that she made for me, and it is a months of the year quilt, so each month has a different image that goes with it. I think my favorite, I don't know, I really love April and May and June, and this has just stayed with me, and my boys have it now. This next quilt is my wedding quilt from my grandmother. My grandmother made all of her 9 grandchildren queen-sized quilts. A lot of us got to choose our own patterns. I chose this pattern and color scheme. I certainly wouldn't choose it now, but in the 1990s when she made this for me, it was what I liked. So it's kind of like a sampler with different block in each section, and she pieced this on a machine, but she quilted this by hand. And she quilts with tiny little stitches. All of the grandchildren were gifted our quilts on our wedding days as our gifts from her. And I keep this, it is very precious to me. I keep it kind of like an art piece. It's not really used that much. I do sometimes use it, but not that much. This next quilt was made by my aunt for my son Kyon. And she did a sampler style as well, so you see all the appliqued animals and toys that are on this one. I also made Kyon a quilt, which you'll see next. So this quilt is used by my second son Elliot a lot, and it's very colorful, and I believe she also did this, quilted this one by hand, and there's lots of fun little toys and different images on it. So this is the first quilt that officially I ever made. This was Kyon's quilt. I made this and designed it myself. It has train fabric on it. He loved trains when he was little. He still uses this quilt. He's 12 now, and it's very sweet that he considers it still to be something that he wants to use. He loved red at the time. And yeah, in 2013 I finished this quilt, and it's still on his bed right now, so he still likes it well enough. This was the first time that I was able to pick all the fabric, and so I wanted, this lovely stripe and the trains. Here we have our family quilt. This quilt is in high rotation. I made this a couple years ago. I used it as an example for my artist residency. This quilt was made with a quilt as you go technique, which means that you just quilt the fabric right down onto the batting, and it's done in kind of faux log cabin style. So this was done with a lot of scraps. Obviously I love the color scheme of the blues and the grays and the whites together. It also has a backing of the first quilt I ever made, which was one that I used in college. When I went away to college, I made one for my bed. And so yeah, this quilt is in high rotation. It's right now a fort covering that Elliot has created for himself during the quarantine. And so it's just called the Reese family quilt, and I completed it in 2017. This quilt is our most recent finish, and this was designed by Elliot himself. He took some of the practice blocks that were made during the artist residency by the kids at the school I was working at, and we cut them up, we sewed them together. He picked out all the fabric, he decided which way it was going to go together, and we actually used some fabric. This floral fabric in the corner was fabric he picked out when he was at a fabric store with me when he was about 4 years old. And so when we were putting this quilt together, I told him that he had to use this fabric because I certainly was not going to use it for anything else but a quilt that we made together. And so when I asked him what he wanted to name it, he said he wanted to name it Mom and Elliot's Quilt. And and so we just finished it the other day. So these are the quilts that are in our home. I love the fact that they all have stories, and the fabric in this quilt, the circle fabric, is actually also in the quilt of Kyon's. Elliot has a whole story behind this design. He says that he sees fish swimming in this blue fabric here, so he's definitely got an intention behind it. It was a really great exercise for me to make this with him. He is super creative, and so I really appreciate that. I just love this quilt. This is, our family quilt, and it lives on our couch, and we use it to keep warm when we're watching movies, or like I said, for forts, or whatever the kids need it for, or whatever Dave or I need it for. And it's really, really versatile, and I'm so grateful that I made it and finished it. Getting quilts as gifts is just a wonderful thing. My aunt has made many quilts. She's a very, very prolific crafter. She's made needle points for me. She is just really, really talented that way. And so having something that she made for Kyon is a real treat. And the boys will use this on their beds or use it when they need blankets for certain things. It's totally up to them. I've learned a lot since I first made this quilt for Kyon. One of the mistakes I made was the red fabric is actually not as high quality as the other fabric, so you can see that it's got some little bit of pilling on it, and that's just because of the quality of the fabric itself. I mean, it certainly has held up to many washings and many years of being used, but if I were to do it again, I would definitely buy a higher quality fabric. You can see by the train fabric what great quality that fabric is, and it's just lasted really, really well. This backing, as I was talking about, was used on my quilt that I made when I went to college, and I took that quilt apart and used it again, reused that fabric. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed learning about these quilts, and I will be back again soon with another video.